Welcome, Diva family, to episode 19. This month, I am celebrating the 1 year mark of this podcast. I launched it last May, and your listening has made the whole venture so worthwhile. So thank you for being part of the journey. For this episode, I'm deeply honored to welcome Kat Kurner, a visionary healer, ceremonial guide, and somatic practitioner whose work is rooted in the transformative power of sacred medicines and feminine embodiment. I first met Kat 2 years ago at the MAPS Psychedelic Science Conference in Denver, which is happening again later this month. I was waiting in a hotel lobby for some dear friends to become available when I noticed Kat sitting in a nearby chair. I'm pretty sure it was her amazing jewelry that first caught my attention and drew me to her, but we ended up having a lovely chat and exchanging information. You know when you have that spark with someone you just met? And I definitely felt that with Kat. The next time we connected was in 2024 when Kat was speaking at the Discovery Sessions conference in San Francisco. And once again, I was delighted to connect with her and get to know her a little better. And now here we are. So let me tell you a little bit about her. Kat Kurner is a psilocybin facilitator, drawing from over 2 decades of holistic healing experience and indigenous wisdom. She helps individuals explore how psychedelic medicines can offer comfort and spiritual connection for end-of-life transitions. Kat helps her clients find their way back home to themselves with the help of psychedelics. She specializes in working with people at end of life, as well as those who are looking to heal themselves with the help of psychedelics. Welcome to Psychedelic Divas, Kat. It's such a pleasure to reconnect with you here.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here. I waited a long time for this, so it's exciting.
Well, I'm so glad because that's true. When I met you, we were talking about the podcast, and at that time, 2 years ago at Psychedelic Science, all I had was a sticker and a dream, a sticker and a dream. I
And
didn't
I
have a
have that
website.
sticker. I have that sticker on my laptop, actually. So I see it every day when I open it and close it.
I love that. But yes, my website wasn't ready. I wasn't ready, but the conference was happening. So I was passing out stickers as my first round of promo for the podcast. And so was part of our initial connection.
I love that. It's very old school.
It's very old school.
It
That's right.
reminds me of when we used to hand out flyers on the Sunset Strip to promote whatever band we were promoting. It was like
Yeah,
before the internet and
exactly.
yeah.
Right. It's an analog.
I love it. Yeah.
And it's also what I like about it is I actually get to connect with people and they can ask questions. I can ask them if do you have an interest can I interest you in a podcast that combines psychedelics and the divine feminine? That's my opening line. And I usually get pretty good responses. Although sometimes people are like, no, I'm like, okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
I'd
Divine
rather,
feminine scares me.
whatever it is, I don't want anyone to just take the sticker and throw it away. So I appreciate the no's.
Yeah.
Well, I would love to start with a bit of your history. So, your grandfather was a Cherokee medicine man, and he told you something interesting when you were 7. Can you share that story?
Yeah. So unfortunately, I didn't have a relationship with my father's side of the family. And when my grandfather was actually quite sick, my mother arranged for us to meet. And the story goes, because I don't remember it, but the story goes that he put his hand on my shoulder, my head, I can't remember, and said, "You have healing hands and you will work with people," or whatever. The story goes through my mother's filter. So I think that when I was about 12 years old, my mom told me that story and I thought, oh, that's interesting. And I
Yeah.
filed it away. I didn't really know what that
Mhm.
meant. So then as I grew through my life and went through different incantations, at some point it became clear to me that what I really wanted to do was to be of service and to help and to be a helper. And for me, so I'm dyslexic, I have ADD. It's really challenging for me to focus for long periods of time. So I didn't do well in school at all. And because I wanted to be a helper, that meant for me at that time at 20, I was really interested in psychodrama therapy. So I went back to college to become a psychodrama therapist
Mhm.
and realized after one semester that The academia was just too challenging for me. I had a small daughter at the time. I was married to a musician. So, of course, we had no money. So, I had to work and be a mom, and it was just too much. So, I got into sales. I was a recruiter for accounting and finance for many years, did very well because I have a type A personality and like people. I'm pretty
Mhm.
good with people. Then my mom was diagnosed with cancer. Things started to pretty radically change for me, although my mom fought really hard for many years. But by the time she was toward the end of her life, I decided to take a hiatus and spend really the last solid month with her. And that was when I learned that I was comfortable with the dying and that I could have difficult conversations, that I could hold
Mm.
space for people when they were in that very precious place. And when it's your mom, it's especially tender. But I was also introduced to hospice through that experience with her. And after I helped walk her home, thought to myself, hospice is the most incredible thing I've ever experienced. Still not ready to give up my big job and my big life. I went right back into recruiting, but I was just never the same. The experience of going through my mom's death was life-changing in a lot of different ways. Long and the short of it was I met this wonderful man from Switzerland. He said, "Why not move to Switzerland?" I said, "Okay." And whilst I was there, because I couldn't work, I had the opportunity to dive deeper into my spiritual practice. The Netherlands was very close by. I had made some contacts and friendships in that area of the world, never knowing that later on I would actually be relying upon that for further training in my chosen profession. But decided to come back to the States and went to school to become a holistic health practitioner. So put my hands on people for many years. And all during those years, I was working on my own spiritual healing. So I became a lifelong member of the Native American Church, sat in many peyote meetings, also journeyed with psilocybin just for my own, again, my own growth and spiritual path. And gosh, I guess it was, I can't remember now. When was it? 2017, I think, that I read the study that Johns Hopkins was doing, Roland Griffiths was doing regarding psilocybin and end of life anxiety and depression and the results that they were having. And as soon as I read it, it was like the light went ding. And I said, oh, well, this is it. This is what I'm going to be doing for the rest of my life. So went back to the Netherlands, was able to really dive into the way in which they utilize psilocybin truffles and end of life anxiety and depression and the journeying that they did. Really developed my personal protocol, my business protocol around the Johns Hopkins model. I browbeat a lot of people around there to talk to me. I made a lot of phone calls to a lot of people. I dug in real deep. And essentially, because I've been in my community for so long and I knew so many people, also happened to be very involved with I think I forgot to say at some point, I was trained at Elizabeth Hospice and started doing hospice volunteering also as a holistic health practitioner. So during that 20 years, I was also gaining that information or experience really. So through that, became very close friends with a palliative care doctor here in San Diego and his wife. They were working on medical aid and dying passed. And suddenly we were aligned with being able to talk about these two things, even though they were quite against the law and taboo. We knew the power. And so, in the underground railroad ways of which we came around to building this practice, did that. Started seeing clients. And I guess it's been just about 10 years now that I saw my first end of life client that I journeyed with psilocybin. Folks, that journey was exactly the journey you would want to have happen when you're just starting off. This incredible woman who had stage 4 pancreatic cancer was so brave to put her soul into my hands, if you will. And it was so beautiful because when my mother was dying, there was one night I was lying next to her and just watching her sleep. And it started to rain. And my mother's eyes opened and she said, I'm going to miss the sound of the rain.
Mm.
And it was very touching to me and something I carried with me. And in the middle of this journey, of this incredible woman, she sat up, took the eye shades off, took the headphones off, and she said, Wow, I'm not afraid. I am God. And I said, Oh, yes, you are. I said, That's beautiful. And she started crying and she laid down and it started raining. And she said, Oh, she goes, I feel your mom's presence so
Mm.
intensely right now. And I said, Oh, that's beautiful. And then she was silent for a moment. And then she goes, I'm going to miss the sound of the rain.
Oh, wow.
And I was just like, of course, bawling, crying. But I really thought at that moment, wow, this is exactly where I need to be. And then the psychedelic renaissance just blew up all around. Again, I didn't have a website. I didn't have an Instagram account that said this is, it was all 100% word of mouth. And that's how I built my reputation, my
Mhm.
name, my practice. And then started seeing, we live in a very heavily military based area here, Oceanside, Camp Pendleton. We have Miramar, we have Coronado. And I started hearing about the struggles with veterans with treatment-resistant depression. The suicide rates are off the charts, and how they were going and sitting with ayahuasca and now psilocybin and iboga. So I got started seeing slowly not only veterans, but basically people who were struggling, who had lost their way from themselves, my philosophy, my feeling, very simplified, is I believe that we are made of vibrational energy and love. And that when people go away from that space in themselves, that's where the problems start, right? That's where the drug and alcohol abuse is mostly rooted in, is that trauma or whatever has taken you away from that center. So I just started helping people find their way back to that and talked to people about microdosing, got involved in decriminalized nature because their ethos is very much in line with how I feel. And now here we are, all these years later, and I am honored and privileged to be still working in this space and trying to still decriminalize psilocybin. So, yeah.
Well, it really is. It's a beautiful, perfect soul journey that you're on. It's that
Thank you.
listening is the early imprint of just your background. I actually, speaking to that, I actually ask you go back to your early days as another time because when you were
Mm,
13, your
mm,
mom sent you on a vision quest with mushrooms. Now,
yeah.
your mom was not Native American, right?
No, no, my mom was
So,
actually Spanish and French.
so how
Yeah,
did that come about, and how did
yeah,
you prepare for it, and what happened?
yeah. So my mom, so my father left my mother before I was born. And so I have the name Kurner because she had been, well, she actually still was married and had four children with Alfred Kurner, who was very German. And when my biological father left my mother, she went back to Alfred Kerner, and I was born as his child, essentially. They divorced not well, I was 10 years old when they officially divorced, but
Mhm.
she was so, I don't want to say obsessed with the Native American culture, the Cherokee tribe where we came from in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. She was really convinced that the blood coursing through my veins was rooted in this spiritual path. She had decided that far long before I ever had. And so part of, I think, her research into that was to learn about vision quests, which
Mhm.
typically were reserved only for boys in, in Native American culture. And just thought that it would be cool. My mom was a hippie ish. She had three boys and a girl who were all very much teenagers in the 70s. So my mom smoked pot and I'm sure did mushrooms. I don't remember her ever telling me she did mushrooms, but anyway, I was a very mature, advanced 13-year-old and was starting to get into kind of some trouble and hang around with the wrong people. And she just sat me down and she said it was like 2 grams of mushrooms. And we have this beautiful hiking trails near our house. And she said, I think it would be good for you to experience this. It's a psychedelic. You'll be fine. At that point, I'm sure I was already drinking and like smoking pot and just trying to fit in. And I did. And I went out and I remember it perfectly, just being out and sitting on this rock and coming back a few hours later. And during that journey and laying on that rock, the message, I hate the term download, but the message I got was, you're going to be a healer, you're going to be a helper. And I don't consider myself a healer, by the way. I really believe that we heal ourselves with the help of these beautiful medicines and fungi. And I don't, I'm not a person who believes like I'm not going to lay my hands on you and heal you. So, but the download was very specific. And that is, again, the same thing. You're going to be helping people. So, yeah.
Well, I think that's helping people is what a healer does. And you're saying, well, I'm not going to lay my hands on you. And you're
Yeah.
working with the terminally ill, so they're not necessarily going to get better,
Yeah.
but they are getting better. They are healing
Mm.
perhaps old family dynamics or traumas or inability to forgive or there's so many things. Yeah. And
Yeah.
so I
Yeah.
recognize that, like, oh, I'm not going to, that word healer
Mm.
doesn't land with you.
Yeah,
But it
because
is
it's
healing work.
yeah, I do believe that for sure, but I again, I feel like it's so a little bit overused or over
Mhm.
people call themselves shaman or healer or
Right.
medicine, and it's like, wow, man, to
Yeah.
me that's a heavy title, and I really
Yeah.
feel like you've gotta earn that, and I don't know that I've earned that yet.
I understand.
Mm.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I pretty much steer people away from if you're the person that you're thinking about working with is calling themselves a shaman and they don't have a
Mm.
deep lineage with some sort of indigenous practice teacher, like for at least a decade, then you should
Yes.
just look
Yeah.
go the other direction. That
Yeah.
is just taking that title. That honorific needs to be earned and honored.
For sure. I sat with ayahuasca about 15 years ago with like a 24-year-old blonde dreadlock wearing young man. And I remember after we drank, he started playing music that he had written
Oh,
with his own lyrics.
oh,
And I instantly started obsessing on Charles Manson. I
oh.
couldn't stop thinking about Charles Manson, and I was like, "I gotta get out of here." And I ended up leaving and going down into this meadow that sorry, no, a grove, an orange grove, and sitting there and having the experience alone in the orange grove because I just had to get away from it. It was so strange. So it's I can't stress enough about how important it is to vet the people that you do this tender work with.
Without question.
Yeah.
And I actually, as a matter of fact, last episode 18, y'all, is what the heck is a psychedelic container? And it addresses some of those issues. So it's like how do you vet the entire container? So anyway,
Mm,
you guys can have to listen to that too. But
yeah, and I've
it addresses some of those issues.
I've put a lot of energy and a lot of work and a lot of heart into creating the container because the container
Yep.
is it's not only just like we call it the journey room, but not only the space that people are doing the work, but the whole container starts when you first are talking with a person and managing the expectations and really getting into the reasons why they are coming
Hmm.
to this experience and having the courage to tell people sometimes that this is not for them.
Right.
And that's not always easy.
No. Well, I know you do hold space in a deeply ceremonial way. So tell us
Mm,
what a trauma-informed, feminine-led psychedelic journey looks like.
yeah. And ceremony is a really interesting word, isn't it, also? Because I think sometimes it conjures, like when I held peyote, I used to have a 27-foot teepee on my property, and I used to hold peyote meetings in the Native American church way, not approved by the Native American church because women don't hold
Right.
peyote meetings in Native American church. But I felt that the medicine was so needed and the healing was so needed. So that to me is ceremony. It's like that's traditional sort of ceremony
Mhm.
around a
That's
fire.
one way of ceremony. Yep.
Yeah, in the ways. And I used to really shy away from saying that what I do is ceremonial But in fact, that's ridiculous because it is, in fact, ceremonial. It's just a little bit different. I work one on one with folks. So there's the preparation, which is not unusual to most, I think, people who are working with medicines now. We're having at least two preparation sessions after we have decided that I am the right person
Right.
for them to
Uh-huh.
work with. So I do a discovery call that we talk about all of the medical questions and making sure the person is actually medically sound to sit with these medicines. I don't work with bipolar population or a schizophrenic population. In my practice, I know there are people who do, but it's just not something I feel comfortable with. I feel like these beautiful medicines can be so destabilizing that if a person is going to do that work, they should do it with somebody who maybe is in a clinical setting, or has a little bit more medical support around those issues. So I do invite people, if they're local, to come here and meet me in person and see where they're going to be working. If folks are from out of state, I usually will do a Zoom call and walk them around the property and show them the journey room, just so that we can really get a good feel of where they're coming to do this work. And then I ask that people not commit to the work until they talk to some other folks, to some other practitioners. I give them resources to find other practitioners in the area. Some people, by the time they get to me, they're adamant that they want to work with me and they already know. But I think it's so important for people, as I said, to really do deep work into finding the person who's the right person and the right fit for you. So once we've gotten over all of that and we've actually set the day, I then send a list of preparation guidelines, which includes things like don't watch the news, get off of social media, get into nature, feed your mind, body, and soul in the preparation of this, all the good, healthy things you can, journal, really understand why you're coming to this experience, all the while knowing that you may get something completely different than why you're coming. I do believe the medicine does give you what you need, not always what you want. And then the morning of, they have to be dropped off and picked up. They can't drive to or from here. I ask that they are fasting the morning of. And then we sit together and really go over things that they've journaled about. And again, the intention. I do my own kind of prayer over the medicine. I ask that they connect with the medicine in their own way, whatever that is. Sometimes it's a nod, sometimes it's in detailed prayer over it as well. They drink, I serve a tea in my
Mhm.
practice. We go into the journey room. It's headphones with beautifully curated music that does not have lyrics, shades. I use the mindfold. I like the mindfold. And then I'm in the room with them during the entire time. If they speak, I write copious notes, whatever they say. I do encourage my clients, if something comes up that they feel is really important, don't try to say, oh, I can't forget this. Speak it out, let it go out so that I can capture it. And then later on, I record a voice note and send it to them so that they can follow up with whoever's doing integration, which leads me to the integration bit. I won't work with individuals who are not committed to integration. So that means they have to, a lot of, probably 50% of my clients come from therapists, but if they haven't come from that route, they have to commit to some form of integration. I do coaching, they can work with me, but they have to have that commitment because it's as important, if not more, than the journey. The integration is so vital. So I talk a lot about that. So when they're done, I bring them out into the living room so they can slowly come back to life. It's really beautiful, surrounded with trees and green, and so they can lay on the couch and just very peacefully come back down. I feed them chicken soup for the soul or vegetarian options, vegetarian soup, nuts and fresh fruit and tea and water. And then I have the option of us doing a little bit of integration right then and there. Some folks want to just be quiet. Some folks want to go lay out by the pool in the sun or take a sauna or whatever. It's really self guided as far as what happens in that time after. And then usually by about 6 o'clock, they're ready to go home. And then the next day, I do an hour of integration with them. And then if they're going to continue integration with me, we set that up. Or sometimes that's just the end of it. And then they're off back to their own therapist or coach. So, yeah.
Well, it sounds beautiful and like a really well held container. So I
Thank
want to
you.
honor that.
Hey, fellow explorers. Thoughtful planning and preparation is the foundation of any successful psychedelic journey. And if something does go wrong, knowing how to navigate that difficult space is essential. That's why I wrote my psychedelic safety guide, including what to do when things go wrong. It's filled with tips and tools for keeping you and your friends as safe as possible. You'll find it at our website, psychedelicdivas.com. Please, go get it, read it, and share it. The more we all know, the safer we can keep each other. Thanks.
So I know that we both agreed that somatics are such an important part of the healing
Mm,
experience.
mm.
So how would you describe the body? Like to me, it's a sacred ally during the psychedelic experience. But how do you engage somatically with clients?
We talk a lot about that in my practice, the somatic experience and the body keeping the score, so to speak. I don't know where some people are in favor of that book, some people aren't. I've learned recently. But so as far as a lot of his awareness around breath, for example, I use a really beautiful lavender oil that is made here in Fallbrook, and I always put it on the wrists of my clients and encourage them to breathe deeply in through their nose, out through their mouth, especially if they get into any kind of an anxiety, especially on the come up. Sometimes there can be some anxiety. I always ask for permission before the journey starts. If I feel that you're having a challenging time, do I have permission to put my hand on your head or to hold your hand, or put my hand on your feet? Because sometimes, and this is where your intuition as a practitioner, facilitator is so incredibly important. I've had individuals just really screaming, crying, yelling, but that was needed. And it was not for me to step in and calm them or take that away. So you really have to know when it's time to put your hands on someone and when it's not. And again, this is something that we learn over years and years of holding space and of tuning into our intuition. So I'm not sure if I'm answering the question, if that's where you were going with the question, but yeah, somatically, we talk a lot about that prior, after. There's opportunities to do yoga and stretching or shaking it out or different ways in which to take care after the journey as well, somatically. Yeah.
Well, all of that answers it. The thing is that what's what can be true for a lot of people is that they're still in their heads.
Mm,
And so how do you
mm,
direct someone out of their head
yeah.
and into the body's knowing or into just
Yeah.
that open space container where there's so much wisdom available. One of the things that I teach my integration clients and talk to them about preparation is that there's three brains. There's the gut brain, the heart brain, and then the head brain, which thinks it's in charge because it's
Mm,
the loudest.
yeah.
But teaching them to ask questions of all three centers. It's like, what
Mm,
does your gut think,
yeah.
about this? And what does your heart have to say? And then
Yeah.
finally asking the brain last, as I said, because it's the know-it-all. And so you want to leave that one for last and allow the other two to speak because the gut brain, it may not have a voice, but
Mm,
you'll feel it. That's
mm,
that intuitive center. And
for
so
sure.
it's getting quiet enough to feel what the gut is wanting.
Mm,
And the heart, it always just, it wants to love, it wants to be in compassion and to give. And that is beautiful, but that may not be the right, well, I don't know what is right and what is
mm,
wrong, but it may not
mm,
be the best place for this person
yeah.
is maybe to be choosing a love path with maybe someone who's toxic, right?
Mm,
So, but it's important. It's like, but I love them. Okay,
yeah.
great.
Yeah.
That's good to know. But the gut is saying we should get out. And then the heart,
Yeah.
the head has all of its reason and logic and all of those aspects. And
Yeah.
what I teach my clients is that when all three are in agreement, that's your strongest place. That's your
Mhm.
full body awareness of your path. And when it's two out of three, then you have to have a conversation with the
Yeah.
part that's not aligned. It's like, well, so what would what would change your mind, or what do you need, or should we, maybe if we wait, what would, would that change?
Yeah.
And just sitting with what wisdom is holding back and
Yes.
not overrunning it. So anyway,
Yeah.
that's one of the ways that I work somatically with my clients, and just
Yeah.
always trying to bring them down out of the head
Mm.
and into the body, at least for a different part of the experiences, giving them awareness to do that when they're in it.
And we talk a lot about that
Mhm.
in preparation. We talk a
Yeah.
lot about that. And I can tell when someone may need a little booster dose
Mhm.
when they're in session. And that is because they are incessantly talking. And it's
Mhm.
not,
Right.
oh, that blue dress. It's not that. It's so you know what I was thinking that so what happened was is maybe but and they're really like they're fully in this and that always makes me think, "Oh, okay. So they're fighting or they haven't had enough medicine or both." And sometimes again, it's going back to your intuition about
Mhm.
that because and that is and sometimes that's when I will step in and I'll say, let's take some nice deep breaths. Are you allowing the full experience? Are you allowing the medicine really to be present with you right now? Because, and then the other, my favorite little soft science bit is obviously on the intake informational form. I know when people's birthdays are, so I know what their astrology signs are. My earth signs are the absolute biggest challenges to launch and to let go and surrender every single time. Virgos,
Fascinating. Yes.
Capricorns, and Tauruses, because they want to be so badly, they're so grounded, right? And we are asking you to be completely ungrounded and we're asking you to let go, surrender, and really give over. Oh my gosh, it's fascinating. It's so fascinating to me. And then of course fire signs were just like, let's go. So anyway, yeah. All of
And
this is important.
what is your sign?
Oh, I am 100% a Leo. I'm a Leo with a Sagittarius rising and my moon is in Virgo. So there's a possibility that my groundedness is also attributed to that Virgo nature. Yeah. Happy to have it there.
All right. Well, so we talked a little bit earlier about the self-proclaimed psychedelic shamans and people who aren't actually really earning the title. So we have all these self-proclaimed psychedelic thought leaders who think they know everything, and yet they have very little hands-on experience.
Mm,
So what should clients be wary of? And how do you think the psychedelic community should self-police for these types of
mm.
people?
Ooh, this is such a juicy one. So a few years ago, I started a signal group called Viva la Underground.
Hmm.
And Viva la Underground was born out of my frustration with the clinical therapeutic model being birthed in Oregon mainly, because you had a lot of therapists and a lot of clinicians who were now getting certified to hold space, and they had never sat with a psychedelic. They had,
Right.
and there was all kinds of different things that were coming up, and there was this. I don't know what the right word is, but there was a lot of shade being thrown to underground practitioners,
Hmm.
and which to me was exceedingly funny that therapists who are working with MDMA didn't consider themselves underground practitioners. And it's like,
It's not legal.
pretty sure that the FDA said no to Lycos. And so I have bad news for you. You are also an underground practitioner. And there's a lot of real challenges. I don't want to say mostly with our male practitioners, but there's there's so much, right? There is a deep need for good practice. There is, in my opinion, a deeper need for developing our own intuition and taking responsibility for our choices and who we choose to sit with. And really digging deep and asking the questions and not being afraid to ask for references and all of that. Now, I find it fascinating that people feel that once you have a medical framework and you are in a clinic with a clinician who is a certified whatever, that you're not going to have people who cross the line, who are inappropriate, who don't do good work, who are not heart-centered, because it happens every day. We see that. Medical doctors
Yeah.
abuse their clients and their patients. It is going to happen. My goal for Viva la Underground was to build a community where we could share good practices, best practices, where we could exchange because people are going to do the work if they want to do it. They're not going to not do it because they haven't gone through a course or they haven't, if they're called to it. And I think they should. I think that we have a lot of broken souls in this world and we need helpers. We need little lights everywhere. And I think if you're called to be a helper and if you feel that call, I don't necessarily agree that you have to come up at the heels of your shamanic grandfather for 20 years before you can hold certain medicines. Perhaps with ayahuasca, perhaps with iboga, perhaps with other kinds of medicines. But psilocybin, and one of the reasons that I sit with psilocybin and not with peyote or some of these other medicines are out of reverence and respect. I think psilocybin is the least dangerous, if you will, of all psychedelics. So I feel comfortable holding it. I take deep responsibility for the work that I do with my clients. And I feel that anyone who is doing this work should also feel that sense of responsibility and care for the people who come to you and entrust you with their minds, bodies, and souls, right? So I think that yes, we need training. Yes, we need practicum. Yes, we need to sit with these medicines ourselves and do our own work. There was a doctor in the UK who engaged with me once and said, Kat, just because somebody can't come to your teepee doesn't mean that they don't deserve healing. We have the medical health system here in the UK where if this is turned into a drug, because at the time I was just like, keep this out of the hands of big pharma, which I don't have any love for big pharma, but his point was well made.
Mhm.
And that is, he said, listen, if it can be paid for, folks can get this pill
Yes.
and it can really help them with this
Yeah.
terrible depression and suicidal ideation. What do you have against that? And I was like, nothing. Good point, right? It made good sense to me. So I think there are lots of different ways to skin a cat.
But I also think that medical professional should have spent a good amount of time on the mat
Mm,
doing their own personal work.
right.
So not just a practicum
Yeah.
where they, and I'm not being all, it's all needed, right? But
Mm,
where it's not just a practicum, which are fabulous and that's also needed, where
mm,
people are able to sit for each other while they're in the training. And
mm,
that's obviously missing because of the illegality. And
right.
so that's beautiful and important. And that qualifies as when you're the one on the mat, that qualifies as doing your own personal work. But
Right.
it's, as we both know, it is more than one and done on that.
Mm,
And I think that's the most, to me, that's the most important thing is that the person has had a significant amount of experience doing their own personal work
yeah.
and that they've maybe done some group work where they've seen had a variety of experiences like they're doing their own thing but there's other people having experiences and then they're learning about it later so that
Yeah.
that is also informing and teaching them
Yeah.
so I actually I agree with the doctor because there's so many people first of all just to have it paid for yes but there's so many people who would never do the underground they just won't
Oh,
and and
absolutely.
and
Yeah.
so we do have to create a medical model
Yeah.
so that they feel safe, that they feel
Yeah.
held. Whether that is it better, who knows? But
Yeah.
at least
We can, yeah,
you
can
know they
also
feel safe in
change.
that container.
We can also start to change the conversation a little bit, though, as well. That I had an experience where I journeyed a woman here in San Diego who is a PhD. She's a psychologist. She also ran a trial with psilocybin and eating disorders. And she contacted me because I had journeyed her brother-in-law. And she said, I'm doing this trials with psilocybin. And I've never sat with a psychedelic in my life. I'd love to come and sit with you. And she did. And at the end, she just looked at me and she said, "We will never be able to reproduce this in a clinical setting." And I was like, what do you mean? And she said, "Well, because every bit of this is what brought me to this beautiful place that I am at right now." And it was in that moment that I lost just a little bit more of my imposter syndrome, just a little bit more, because
Yes.
I work, I'm surrounded by people who have lots of letters behind their names. And here I am with a 10th grade education just going, "I'm not fit enough. I'm not smart enough." And I understand finally that after 20 years that maybe I have learned some things and maybe I have created something that's beautiful. And again, it doesn't mean that the folks that are going into ketamine clinics and getting ketamine treatments in a clinic are not benefiting. I'm sure many of them are. So I just think that's why I'm constantly now going back to this thing about our own sovereignty. I want to talk to people more about tapping into yourself and trusting yourself and then verifying. Trust
Hmm.
and verify, right?
Yes. With
Um,
everything.
with everything, right? And so that's where I'm at with that. I believe me, for the people out there who've known me long enough, they've seen the pendulum really swing with me. I've been like this, and then I've been like this, and I've dipped my toe into a lot of different things. I got arrested at the DEA for protesting them not allowing our cancer patients access to psilocybin, even though under the Right to Try Act, we should have that access, but because it's controlled by the DEA, they're not giving
Right.
access. I've been really hardcore Decrim Nature. I've led the underground. I basically shut down Viva La Underground because it got to be just too much, except Viva La Underground will always exist because it's a statement, like, long live the people, the grandmothers, long live
Right.
the legacy medicine carriers who you will never see on a podcast, who you will never see on an Instagram account. And I think it is really interesting for me to see. I see especially some folks will go down to Mexico and they'll be privileged enough to sit in really authentic, beautiful
Mhm.
psilocybin ceremony, or they'll go into Peru and they'll be able to have, and then suddenly they come back and they think by those few experiences, they can just replicate it here and that everything is going to be just fine. And it's wild to me. Yeah, but that's the way of the world, though, too, isn't it? And at a certain generation of just everything is fast right now. Buy 50,000 Instagram followers, platform yourself, proclaim whatever you want. Nobody checks anything. It's wild. And I think, again, the only thing that we really can control is our own ability to vet people and to tune into our intuition and what our intuition is telling us about folks. Yeah.
Well, so let's dive a little bit deeper into Decrim Nature. So I
Mm,
know that you believe that people should be able to gift, gather, and grow their own medicine.
mhm,
And you mentioned that we wanted to see more people take responsibility for their own healing when we talked
mm,
earlier.
mm,
So, what's your ideal vision for these medicines?
mm.
And how do we as some sort of tradition or wisdom keepers, I don't even know what we would like to call ourselves, but we've been in this world for a while. What's our role in manifesting that ideal vision?
Yeah, I think our role is to continue to sit with medicine in a good way and to educate where we can. So I am deeply committed to the ethos of decrim nature
Hmm.
because I believe the idea of being able to grow your own medicine, gift your medicine, and gather together and share medicine is where it's at. Is just where I just believe that's just so, so beautiful. Now, I'm not naive also to the idea that, as you alluded to, there are some people who are never going to ingest something if it doesn't have an FDA stamped approved container with a label and that they've got it through their insurance company or whatever. And I have respect for those folks too, because everyone is on their own path, their own place and time. And I am not going to shame people for taking antidepressants. I'm not going to shame people for not sitting with medicine in the way I think it should be sat with. I'm not interested in that. What I'm interested in is individuals finding what is right for themselves. That's what I'm interested in. I often share with, especially the younger generation that are all constantly upset about something, that spending your time and energy fighting the big corporations and big pharma to keep their hands off of psychedelics, and it's like, why are you doing that? It's left the gate already. That train has left the station. It's already there. They already have it. And so put your energy and your time into your community. If we have communities where we have decrim nature, then, or we have decriminalization, at least you can sit with your neighbor and you can share something that could help them, that your abuela could sit with you and give you some mushrooms and hold space for you. Or what I want is to change the whole narrative around psychedelics, not saying that they are for everyone, not saying that they are the answer for everything, not saying, just with caution. It's one of the things that's most difficult for me is that alcohol is the most low vibration, most destructive, horrible thing that we have. Now, I like wine now and again with a nice dinner. I have beautiful bottle of wine with a meal with a group of friends. It's lovely. I don't go to the store and get a gallon of vodka and drink it down and die of alcohol poisoning. Now, why don't I do that? Well, because somewhere along the line, I learned that's not what you do with that spirit, right? And so I've always baffled that the battle cry from people who are against the legalization or the decriminalization, these beautiful natural substances, is how dangerous they are. It's like, well, lots of things are dangerous if you don't
I
have the
don't
education.
know. I don't know. I actually I don't know of anybody who has gone into rehab for LSD abuse.
No, but there are people who have
I
taken
mean,
too much
yes, yeah,
LSD.
oh,
They've
absolutely.
got
There's
the
all kinds.
tinfoil hat.
Right.
No, we
There's
don't want that.
there's issues that, and it could be psilocybin.
Sure.
There's certainly issues, but when we talk about the abuse and the danger,
Oh,
so we're not seeing all of these, and it's billions served, billions of doses served of these medicines, and you're
yeah,
not seeing people showing up. Yes, there are people doing poly drug issues showing up in rehab. Okay, so I'm not talking
sure,
about that. I'm talking
sure.
about single source. There's people showing up for Oxycontin, for methamphetamine, for alcohol, but there's not a huge line of people showing up with addiction issues around psilocybin, LSD, MDMA.
Right.
And so right there, we've already done the test. It's not a double blind placebo study in terms of
Right.
addiction, but the world has shown us with real life that those worries aren't, we don't have to have those worries about these medicines. We
Because
can have
most
other worries,
people,
but
yeah, I think most people that are really prone to addiction are trying to disassociate and trying to numb. They're not trying to dig deep into their traumas and then dig
right,
deep and have their minds expanded. It's a completely different thing. It's a completely
right.
different vibe. And yet, in our society, alcohol to numb, it's available on every corner. And so that's a whole big, giant quantum shift that I would love to see happen. Is it going to happen in my lifetime? I doubt it. But I love that we're talking about it more now and that we are talking about the fact that not all drugs are the same, that psilocybin is not the same as crack cocaine. So, yeah, I just think that, again, I just keep bringing it back down to us. The government is not going to solve our problems. The government is not going to, if you're looking to the government for your mental health, you're looking in the wrong place. Yeah.
Well, all right. Since this podcast is about psychedelics and the divine feminine, going to ask you for the final question here.
Mm.
What message or guidance do you think the divine feminine is offering us collectively at this moment in time, especially through the viewpoint of psychedelic awakening?
That's a great question. That's a great question. Wake up. Wake up to your power. Wake up to your divinity. Wake up to your strength. Embody your strength. Understand that we are nature and there is nothing stronger than Mother Nature, right? And so the time is now that we are reclaiming ourselves and our sovereignty. And it also doesn't mean that we have to hate the masculine either.
No,
I
no.
think that's out of balance. I think I love the masculine. I love my male brothers on this planet. I really do. I think that they are also having a lot of unlearning to do. And we're here for that. I think the feminine is helping the masculine to really understand that it's a different time now. And we're sorry that you had the experience that you did and you were taught what you were taught, maybe from your abusive machismo lineage. But we're here to tell you there's something beautiful and deep, and that beauty and that depth can be found certainly in nature, certainly in some psychedelics, I think. So it definitely, I, what a beautiful combination. Psilocybin and the masculine and the feminine growing together and healing each other. Yes, please.
Yes, please. Okay, perfect place to end this. Kat,
Mm.
thank you so much for your time and
Thank you.
your beautiful work in the world. How can people find you and learn more about you?
It's really hard. You have to dig deep into the underground. No. So Healing with KK is my Instagram. Healing with Kat was taken by somebody who's never ever posted one thing, but I'm not bitter. Even though I did reach out several times saying, "Do you think I can use this?" Didn't happen. But and then Healing with Kat is my website. I'm on LinkedIn and Signal. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, I can highly recommend that. It's worth tracking her down. She has a beautiful website. Well done.
Thank you. It needs to actually be redone. I'm still sitting in front of my teepee with the feathers, and people are coming to me and they're expecting that they're going to have some kind of a true like Native American experience. And it's like, oh, sorry, that's not what I do. So I need to change the website, but thank you for your compliment. I
Okay.
appreciate
Well,
that.
it is still, I'm a connoisseur of websites and
Oh,
it,
nice.
even if it's a little dated, it's a
Yeah.
beautiful container on its own.
Thank you so much. And I appreciate it. Thank you for showing up the way you do in the space. And I appreciate you so much. And look forward to seeing you hopefully in person again in Denver. Will you be
In
there?
Denver. I'm
Yeah.
going to Denver. All right.
Great. See you then.
Well, thank you everyone for listening and for being on this learning journey together. If you found this valuable in any way, please share it with those you know. And if you have a second, please give us a 5-star rating or a thumbs up wherever you're listening. That would really be awesome. And if you want to be part of this ongoing journey with me, you might want to consider going to psychedelicdivas.com and sharing your email address. And I understand nobody likes email. Believe me, I hate email as much as anyone. So I promise not to spam you. But I will give you my psychedelic safety guide, which includes what to do when things go wrong, in exchange for that email. And it's also the most reliable way to stay in touch with me, since sometimes social media sites pull down psychedelic accounts at their whim. So thanks for considering joining my mailing list, and wishing everyone a safe journey. And thank you again, Kat, for your time. All right.
Thank you
Thank
so
you all.
much.
Bye-bye.
Take care.